Hey everybody, and welcome to a new Glaser Group video. Today we're going to talk about the 15 facts, fables, most asked questions and things like that. We have in the last couple of months been gathering a lot of questions, a lot of things that we had on our mind or client questions. And today we want to talk about what's going on and how reality actually is. Let's start with number one, and I think this is one of the most misunderstood things. If you buy a property for 600,000 euros, you sell it for 700,000, you're not making 100,000 euros in profit. And I do hear a lot of people say, oh, I bought it for 5 and I'm selling it now for 6, or I bought it for 6 and I'm selling it for 7. I've got 100,000 euros worth in profit. But they're wrong. Because what is a big part of it? Purchase cost, added purchase cost. If you buy a 500,000 or a 600,000 euro property, you will have added taxes to it. So to give you a better understanding, for a new build property, we always estimate that the added purchase costs are roughly 12 to 13%. If you're taking a mortgage on it, it's even going to be 14 to 15%. Because of opening cost with a bank, of maybe you're going to use a mortgage advisor who's going to do it for you. That is all going to add to it. If you're now going to selling at 600,000 and you need to go and pay an agency 5% to sell it for you, you're happy to break even. We haven't even talked about furniture. We haven't even talked about all the extras. So no, if you buy it for 6 and sell it for 7, you're not making a profit. You're actually losing money. Let's move on with number 2. If I buy a new build, I get the key. I can start living there the next day. In 99 out of 100 times, that's not going to happen. Water needs to be connected. You need a new energy meter, electricity meter. You need a new water meter. 9 out of 10 times, that's going to take 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get everything done. Sometimes we see new build developers already doing it for their clients, having everything ready. Or like one of the cases we have now, the client received the keys today, but still has building electricity and water from the developer because the connections hasn't been properly made. So he can get in tomorrow actually and keep on going. Keep in mind, once he in, we still need to fit the lights, put in the furniture, get everything done, dusted, cleaned for him to get ready to move in and enjoy life. Another one thing that we recently hear a lot about is investing, and investing for potential rental. We see a lot of people buying off-plan buildings, new builds, that's still going to take 2 to 3 years before it's going to be ready, with the idea to rent it out. And the problem with that, it is a gamble. Because since the rule changed, the law changed actually, of April 3rd, you need to have a 60% majority vote in the community of owners. And since in a new build or off plan, 9 out of 10 times there hasn't been a community meeting yet, you're not sure if you're even going to get a 60% majority vote. So what if you're going to buy now an off plan or a new build that's going to be ready in 2027, 2028, with the idea it's investment only, with the potential or the idea to rent it out short-term holiday rental? Nobody can give you a guarantee. Everybody can say, we expect to, but unless there is a community meeting and the community of owners decides with a 60% majority vote, there is no guarantee. And as long as there is no finished product, and nobody has the keys to their apartment, there is no community of owners. Hence, there is no guarantee you can rent it out. You can make an amazing profit or investment on it, but you will never have the guarantee 100% that you can rent it out. So be very careful with that and do your own due diligence before you buy on the advice of somebody. I want to come back a little bit to the first question, or at least touch on some of the things we just discussed. Buying cost. Because like in most countries, if you buy for 500,000 euros, you go to notary, the end sum that you need to pay will not be 500,000 euros. You need to pay taxes, you need to pay lawyers, you need to pay, well, you name it. You need to pay everything. You need to pay your mortgage advisor, you need to pay notary, etc. So always keep in mind between 9 and roughly 14-15% of cost that you need to add on your purchase. It's very easy. I always say keep in mind that if you're going to buy an existing building, something that's already there, that's already owned by somebody, count with roughly 10%. It's going to be, if you're not going to need a mortgage, roughly 9. But let's make it easy. Let's count with 10. Makes it easy. You get money back and you can use it on furniture or whatever. You need to count almost 13 to 14% if we are talking about new build and off plan. So again, if you buy for 500,000 and you're going to buy new build off plan, you have almost a 60,000 euros tax, notary, lawyer fee to plan on top of that. That makes it always very difficult to sell it with a profit if you want to just do a quick flip, because of the purchase costs that are quite high and the selling cost as well. So now we've talked a little bit about the fees that are involved. Let's talk a little bit more about how many people are actually included in your sales process and sales cycle. It depends a little bit of the setup of your own buy. Are you going to be using a mortgage advisor or not? Are you going to be using a different insurance advisor, or are you going to go with the bank, for example? Keep in mind, you're going to be using 9 out of 10 times a real estate agent, a lawyer, notary. Everybody will have those. You will be using a mortgage advisor. You will be using a bank. You will be using an insurance advisor. All those are very important. And then we haven't even talked about a surveyor, a handyman to fix things up, a contractor, a stylist, stuff like that. So as you see, to do it well, the one real estate agent is very important and is your main contact, but it's just a part of the team that you're working on. And that's why it's very important to look further than only the agent. What's his team? Who is he working with? And how can we create the perfect persons to work in your team? How can we make the perfect team to work for you? Because in the end, a team does more than one person alone. And a very interesting one that we recently had been asked to us. I want to buy something, but I don't want to be spending 1% or roughly that on using a lawyer. Can I buy a property without a lawyer? And the answer is yes, you can. And if you're Spanish and you know where to go, it might be much easier. If you're like me, Dutch, you're like a lot of our clients, English, American, Canadian, even Mexican, it's going to be so much tougher. You don't know where to go. You might not even speak the language. You don't know anything about the local law or tradition. So our advice will always be work with a lawyer, because if you do not check everything correctly, for example, does a property have outstanding debt? And you buy the property without having checked and the debts have been paid, you also inherit the debt. So yes, you can work without a lawyer, but it can be very costly. One of the differences, for example, from the Netherlands, where I'm from, is in the Netherlands, a notary does a lot of the work that a lawyer does here. In Spain, a notary is there to register your property and do the act, and not to check about insurances, not to inform you about outstanding debts, etc. So it's a completely different ballgame here, and therefore our advice will always be work with a lawyer.
Just actually say that as one sentence. So our advice would be,
Yeah.
so it's all in one go.
Yeah, so you can just,
Yeah.
Our advice will always be work with a lawyer. One of the things we already discussed is I've seen a price online. Can I buy it for that? We recently had a client who was asking for a 300,000 euro new build that he's seen, and he actually only had a 300,000 budget. We had to disappoint him because that new build, point one, was the cheapest apartment that it was advertised on, with the pictures of the best apartment, which unfortunately happens a lot. But also, as we just discussed, you have the added purchase costs. So in the end, his 300,000 euros would have been almost 340, 350,000 euros before he would have finished and bought the property in his name. Keep that in mind. You always have added purchase cost, because a lot of things are not certain in life, but debt and taxes are. And in Spain, that's no difference. One of the facts and the fables that I see at these days on social media, I see a lot of people looking to buy or sell directly to the owner or from the owner. We recently had it, one of our clients was interested in a 700,000 euro property. We contacted them, the person who's selling, and they said, no, I'm sorry. We do not want to sell with a real estate agent because we do not want to pay the fee. And even if your client pays the fee, we do not want to work with you, which is very weird because you take a buyer away the chance to have the experience how he wants, the advice and the service that he might need, and therefore you're losing out on a lot of potential clients. But there is also a risk if you're buying a property without a real estate agent. And keep in mind, we always talk about a proper, professional, registered real estate agent. As we've mentioned in one of our earlier videos, even a gardener who works in a 1 million euro property can sell it for you. But that doesn't mean he's a real estate professional. If you work with a real estate professional, a registered one, he knows the places, he knows the prices, he's got negotiation possibilities and skills and information that you might miss out on. Therefore, you can probably get a better price than you would have without buying a real estate agent. Every property has an LPO, an AFO, or is legal in Spain. And even though a lot of people say it's something from the inland, not every property is legal. It even happens a lot on the coast. Not every property has an AFO. Not every property has an LPO. Not every property can get a certificado de non-infracción or a cédula de habitabilidad. So always be careful what you buy. Comes back to, again, Glaser Group advice. Work with a lawyer. Because not everything is legal. Everything can be bought. But we always need to be sure, what are you buying, what are you selling, and are we aware of the dangers that comes with it? I want to go to number 10 of the list that we have of the 15 questions. And that is one that had been, well, we actually had it on a sale we did in Valtocado a couple months ago. We had sold this property for a nice price to a German family. And this German family signed a reservation contract with everything in it, and after a couple months, or well, actually a couple of weeks, they decided not to buy the property. They decided to buy the property for a reason that wasn't mentioned in the reservation contract, and therefore they had to withdraw from it. This came with a penalty clause for them, and in the end they ended up paying 12,000 euros in damage payments, compensation to the owner of the property for cancelling that sale. So yes, a reservation contract is a legally binding contract that sets the terms for any future contracts, like a contrato de compraventa, which is normally the next step in a sales cycle. Always be very aware, if you sign something, it's almost always legally binding. Can I always Airbnb or holiday rent my home? And the answer is no. Even if you buy an amazing holiday apartment with the idea of using it yourself and renting it out a couple weeks a year, a couple months a year to cover your costs or to have it used for the months that you're not there, you will not always be able to get a rental license on the property. Since the 3rd of April, it's necessary to get an approval from the Comunidad of Owners, the community of owners, and they need to have a 60% majority vote to even allow persons to get a tourism license. If you have a detached home or you have something that doesn't have a community of owners, it makes it much more easy, but still not always a guarantee that you can rent your home. So be careful what you do and always ask the advice of your real estate agent and your lawyer before you make a purchase with the idea of renting it out. Renovating my home will always increase the value of my property. And the answer is no. If you do a renovation very good, your price can skyrocket for sure. And we see it happening a lot. We see it a lot of happening in Marbella, those areas that old villas, they will be bought, they will be refurbished, and they will be sold at a premium price because they look brand new and have everything on it. But what's very important in this is legality and licensing. 9 out of 10 times you cannot make your property bigger because we in Spain work with a maximum amount of square meters that you can build. If you build more than the square meters that are allowed, in fact, you're not increasing your property value, you're actually decreasing it because it makes part of your house illegal, more difficult to sell, and in the end, you will have to lower your price because less and less people, thankfully, are buying illegal houses with improper paperwork. So be very careful what you do. You keep everything the same, you're not expanding, you do a very nice, good quality refurb, it can 100% increase your price. You do a bad job, bad quality, rushed, cheap materials, again, the added value to the property might not even cover the cost that you've made for the refurb. So always be very careful and only work with decent professional people. One of the funny things again that we came through one of the people we spoke about buying one of the properties we were selling, and the buyer wanted to make an offer, which of course we are very happy with. The only problem that we had with this offer that he was expecting that he could get 100% mortgage on the property, which it's impossible. 99 out of 100 times you will never get 100% mortgage on it. As we have said in previous video with our mortgage advisor from Fluent Finance Abroad, you can see you can get 60 to 70% of property value if you're a non-resident in Spain. And residents in Spain generally get 80% of the property price. You will see some instances that it goes higher, but never 100%. Once I get the key, I can immediately start renting out my properties. And again, no, you cannot. We need to get a tourism rental license before we even start thinking of renting your property. You need to make sure that your property is up to date with a lot of regulations. Do you have air conditioning or fans in any of the bedrooms? Do you have blinds or blinding curtains in the bedrooms? Those things are legally binding things. You need to have at least 14 square meters per inhabitant. So if you only have a 54 square meter apartment, you can only rent it out to 3 people. All things like that matter. And of course, you like to do better. You like to have a fire extinguisher, a first aid kit, things like that ready in the apartment. So no, as soon as you get the keys, it will still take a couple weeks before we can legally rent out your apartment. We will do it, but we need to do everything well and well prepared. And then I like to go to the last and final question, one of my all-time favorites. If you buy a property on the Costa del Sol, it will always go up in value. And again, this just isn't true. We see a lot of areas that go up in price very nice. And if we take the average price increase in the last 10 years, it's been roughly 7.5% year on year. But there are so many factors that are important about pricing and price increases in, for example, an apartment complex. One of our clients bought a very nice apartment, I think 4 or 5 years ago. And I think if he wants to sell it now, it's going to be very difficult to get all of his costs covered. Yes, his price will have been increased, but he will never sell it with a very huge profit. The monthly fee to the community of owners more than doubled from 200 euros to 500 euros. Which is very strange because the facilities have remained the same. And yes, the gardener is doing an amazing work, and yes, the pool is looking very nice, but that doesn't make your apartment sell faster because less and less people are willing to pay a 500 euro community fee only for a small putting green, a paddle court, and a pool that's only open during holidays. So no, not always a property will increase in price. It's got to do with timing, it's got to do with quality of the property. If the paintwork isn't done, the maintenance isn't done properly, everything will stay the same. Go down or only increase very little bits, so it doesn't make a difference. So again, be very careful where you buy, what you buy, and if it's an investment, always do your homework. And very important, only work with registered and licensed real estate agents so you know you only get the best. One of the other things that are very important if you're thinking of selling your property is to do very good thinking of which real estate agent you're going to work with. Don't only just work with the friend you met in the bar because you like him. One of the situations we came about recently was a property we wanted to see in Ben Al Medina that was being advertised and marketed by a real estate agency in Estepona, 45 minutes away. This one real estate agency actually only had one property. They already admitted they weren't the real listing agency, and they did it because they liked the man and actually met him in a bar. Be very careful. What happened with this property, because the agent was so far away, it was very difficult to set a meeting with it. And once we finally got there, it was very difficult to get a second meeting. And it kept on going and going and going. He had very little knowledge of the area and therefore couldn't convince our client to buy and why it was a very good sale. So if you're thinking of selling your property, prefer to work with a local agent who actually has multiple properties and a good understanding. Because what we see from our own database and our own work, if we get a request for one of the villas we have, we always try to introduce 1 or 3 other similar properties that we have to increase the chance of selling them. What we had recently, actually today, we sold an apartment in Gigeron West. And this is the second apartment that we actually sold there in the last couple months. And this is exactly the same as the first one. So the first apartment we sold on the first viewing on a video call with a client from Italy. Today, we sold again on the first viewing the apartment in Gigeron, very close to asking price, on a video call with a Mexican client living in Los Angeles who is buying this. So what's so important when you work with a selling agent? To do due diligence. Is he good? Does he know what he does? Is this the first for him or do they have multiple? And since we sell multiple properties a year and we really focus on selling and buying properties, we have a very good marketing strategy and we only work with the top professionals. The people who came here, got the properties through their agents, already had seen the videos of the properties and they knew they were going to like it. So a quick video call from within the property made them both times to decide to go ahead and buy the property. So be very aware who you work with, what they do, and how they can actually achieve the best results for you. Thanks for watching and see you next time.